So let's get started here. We're on the next question. We're going over these review questions at the end of the book. And we're on question 22. And the topic is how the Wahhabis misinterpret the texts. Yani, how do the Wahhabis make ta'wil? And what's their method? Question 22. Is it fair that you have not presented their references yet? So where's that question coming from? That question is coming from being the 22nd question here on page 38. So that means that we have been doing a lot of talking here about Wahhabis. Wahhabis here. They are this and that. This is what they do. This is what they believe. So then, now you said all what you said and you didn't say any proof that they use. Is it fair that you have not presented their references yet? Yes, it is fair. Why it's fair? Because all of what was done here was premise to establish something. So we can produce their proofs. We will produce their proofs. We can explain their proofs. Insha'Allah ta'ala, we'll talk about all their main proofs. Like, we're at the end of the book now. It's a review. Yani, like the ayahs of istiwa, the hadith of the slave girl, the hadith of nuzul, the meaning of al-yadan, and things like that. And then they have some offshoot proofs under those different issues there. We didn't get to any of that yet because we want to establish some premises. So yes, it is fair. Question: is there any evidence in the Qur'an that their way of interpretation is not correct? Sounds like the one who's posing these questions is, let's say, giving the Wahhabis a benefit of the doubt, as they say. Is it fair that we haven't presented their references? We don't even make their claim to have to present their references. Who has to produce proof? The one who makes the claim. We only have to produce references for our own claims, not for their claims. But we will address those, inshallah. Then, is there any evidence in the Qur'an that their way of interpretation is not correct? Yani, assuming that you have properly represented the Wahhabi way, those who call themselves Salafis, their method of interpretation, and assuming that you have properly explained their convictions, is there evidence in the Qur'an that this way of theirs that you attribute to them is incorrect? Yes, there is. What's that? Among that is the saying of Allah Ta'ala, فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ زَيْغٌ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ مِنْهُ. Concerning those who have perversion in their hearts, they pursue what is ambiguous from the book. So what does that mean? It means there's some people, they are deviated in their convictions. What's their practice? Their practice is to pursue certain verses of the Qur'an. Which verses are those? Those are ma tashabaha minhu. What's ambiguous of the Qur'an? That's what they pursue. That's what they target. They target some class of verses in the Qur'an. This class of verses, that's the ambiguous class, the mutashabih. So Allah warned us about that. That's what they do. Allah described what they do in this ayah. ibtigha al-fitnati wa ibtigha ta'wilih. They do it, their goal, for the sake of fitna, tribulation, which is what? To take you out of your correct Sunni belief and to bring you into their tashbih, to bring you into their God-comparing belief, paganism belief, imagination worship. That's the fitna. Ibtigha al-fitna. They misinterpret mutashabih verses to cause fitna. What's their fitna? To take you out of your right belief, to argue with you and take you out of your correct aqidah, to put doubts into your heart. وَابْتِغَاءَ تَأْوِيلِهِ, and to misinterpret those verses, seeking the misinterpretation of those verses. That's the meaning there. That's what the Wahhabis do, and the people in the past who are like them. This is just another iteration. It's a reiteration of prior groups. Each one has its own little twist to it. In this time of ours, this is the group that follows Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. He's the one who revived the teachings of Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah. And before Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah, there were people like that. So that's a proof from the Qur'an that their way of interpretation is not correct. So maybe someone might say, I don't know, that was kind of deep. I didn't really see, where's the proof there? The proof there is that Allah told us that there's some people, they pursue the ambiguous verses of the Qur'an, as opposed to what? The muhkam verses. So Allah Ta'ala says in 3rd surah, 7th ayah, هُوَ الَّذِي أَنزَلَ عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابِ. He it is who revealed to you the book, O Muhammad. مِنْهُ آيَاتٌ مُحْكَمَاتٌ. Some of it is decisive verses, explicit verses. Hunna ummul kitab. Those are the base of the book, the reference. Those are the reference for everything else in the book. So that's what we take. We take the explicit verses that are the reference for everything else in the book. Like, laysa kamithlihi shay. Nothing is like him in any way. So then, if we saw another ayah like Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arshi istawa, we say it's not a physical aboveness, because then something would be like him in some way. And like that, when we come across Ma mana'aka an tasjuda lima khalaqtu biyaday, we don't say this means what prevented you from prostrating to what I created with my 2 hands, because that would mean that something is like him in some way. But nothing is like him in any way. When we come across the hadith, حَتَّى يَضَعَ رَبُّ الْعِزَّةِ قَدَمَهُ, until the Lord of might and glory puts his qadam into hell. We don't say that means Allah puts his real foot in hell, because this would mean something is like him in some way. And like that. That's what it means that the explicit verses are the reference for everything else in the book. Minhu ayatun muhkamat. Some of the Qur'an is explicit verses, decisive verses. Hunna ummul kitab. Those verses are the reference for everything else in the book. Wa ukharu mutashabihat. And other verses are ambiguous verses. That means, and there's another class of verses, they have, compared to those, a subordinate rank, meaning they're not a source for everything else. They go back to something that's a source for them. That's what I mean by subordinate. They have a reference before them. They have a reference that they go back to. Yani, they're not independent of some other verses. Their interpretation depends on those. The interpretation of istiwa depends on laysa kamithlihi shay. It's not the other way. Those people did it the other way. They make the interpretation of laysa kamithlihi shay dependent on the interpretation of istiwa and dependent on the interpretation of biyaday, etc. and dependent on the interpretation of hatta yada'a rabbul izzati qadamah. So that's the proof in the Qur'an that their way is the wrong way. فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ زَيْغٌ. Concerning those about whom there is deviance in their hearts, that means an inclination away from the truth. فَيَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ مِنْهُ. They pursue what is ambiguous from the book, not what's a reference for everything else. So they are misguided ones. Those are the Wahhabi so-called Salafis. Ibtigha al-fitnah, seeking fitnah. Wabtigha ta'wili, and seeking its misinterpretation, not the right interpretation. Seeking its ta'wil here means they're wanting their interpretation that they want to give it. They give it their preconceived notions, not its proper interpretation. وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. And no one knows its interpretation but Allah, and those who are deeply rooted in the knowledge. So that's the answer for question 23. Is there any evidence in the Qur'an that their way of interpretation is not correct? Yes. So this verse of the Qur'an is very important to understand it. This verse, the third surah, 7th ayah, is a keystone. Yani it is very important cog for understanding this case. Put it in its proper place, in the proper way, and then turn it the way it's supposed to be turned, and then everything will open up, inshallah. If you turn it the wrong way, then your key's going to break in the lock there. You're going to be stuck like a Wahhabi. Question 24. What do they say about your refusal of their literal meanings? Yani, so that means, what's their accusation against us then? You refuse their literal meanings? Assuming they take the literal meanings like you claim they do, then what do they hold against you? How do they accuse you for going against their literal meanings? The answer is they charge us with blasphemy. And they accuse us of different types of blasphemy. They say, when we don't accept those literal meanings of theirs, then we are committing ta'til, atheism. And they say, you are the mushabbih, you are the God comparer. You must have been comparing God to the creations to even think that we're saying that his hand is like the creation's hand. And then you denied it. You are the mushabbih. So they also accuse us of tashbih, but mostly of atheism, ta'til. And they accuse us of takdhib, of denying the religious documents, of contradicting the religion. That's kufr. So their judgment for the Ash'aris and the Maturidis, and anyone who doesn't believe like they believe anyway, no matter what your name is that you're a kafir. That's fundamental Wahhabi belief. Now, these days, you might find some people who claim to be Salafis, and maybe they lightened up on takfir, deeming someone a kafir. Maybe some of them are trying to take more moderate position. But that's not their origin, and the Muslims know about this. The origin of Wahhabis, that you're not one of them, you are a kafir, and you are mubtadi'. A Wahhabi, take one look at you. If you don't look the part, you're probably a heretic. That's the type of people they are. They would say just by looking at someone that they don't know, they say he's probably a mubtadi'. So that's what they say about our refusal of their literal meanings. Question 25. Are there religious texts that attribute organs to Allah? So maybe this person who's asking here all these questions here, maybe he's trying to understand what's going on between the two groups. As if he's someone in the middle trying to piece together the issues here. Are there religious texts that attribute organs to Allah? That's a yes or no question. So this one who's asking you, he wants you really to tell him yes or no. So what's the answer to that? The answer is no, there's no religious texts that attribute organs to Allah Ta'ala. But there are texts that they seem so. That's how those people got confused. So then you might say, can we say that? Can we say they seem to? Yeah, that's the case. They do seem to. That's what the scholars mean when they say ظاهرها, what appears from them. There are ayahs of the Qur'an and hadiths of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that appear to attribute organs to Allah Ta'ala and bodily attributes. But they don't really. So that's the answer for his question. No, there aren't any religious texts. There's no authentic religious texts that attribute organs to Allah. If it were authentic, then it needs to be explained properly. Okay. Well, question 26. What if they say, if Allah revealed a word, then it should be literal, or else he would have revealed a different word? So they say that sometimes. This is the answer here. Can you give examples? Yes. Yeah, you can give examples. So it may seem to, like some of the ones we already said, like Ya Iblisu ma mana'aka an tasjuda lima khalaqtu biyaday. Oh Iblis, what prevented you from prostrating to what I have created? Biyaday, looks like it says, by my two hands. So seems to be attributing organs to Allah. But that's not what it means though. And others. So that's exactly what the Wahhabi is going to attack this person with. When I say attack him, I mean try to misguide him with that. This ayah and istiwa, along with his confidence, which is a bunch of hot air, and some other talk they have. Ibn Abbas said, and Imam Fulan said. So what if he said, if Allah revealed the word, it should be, as it is, should be apparent literal meaning, or else he would have revealed a different word. If a Wahhabi said that to me, I'd say to him, only someone who's weak in Arabic would say that. And then I'll see what he says. The Qur'an doesn't say that. The Qur'an doesn't say, if Allah revealed the word, it should be literal, or else he would have revealed a different word. And the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam doesn't say that. So that's proof in the religion right there. The Ijma' doesn't say that, unless you're going to give me a reference, which you don't have one. And really the evidence is against that. And, yani, Allah Ta'ala blessed us to have studied some Arabic, so we know this is not the case. This really is just ignorance. That's a statement of ignorance. And it's a statement of weakness and laziness. And it's a statement of dim-wittedness. So, take that. Get that out of here. So, we're now touching on the issue of majaz. Majaz. What does majaz mean? Majaz means figure of speech, non-literal speech. So that's an important vocabulary word for you in this subject, the subject of the proper interpretation of ambiguous verses and hadiths. Because this is a case that is very intermingled with Arabic language. And we're talking about not taking things literally. So what do you call that when you don't take things literally? Majaz. It's called majaz, figure of speech. Question 27. Why do Wahhabis forbid alternative explanations of these texts? How come they're not allowing you to make a ta'wil and they're insisting that you take them literally as they are? Answer is that because they want to compare Allah to the creations. Now, Wahhabis are going to say that's a lie. We don't want to compare Allah to the creations, and we don't compare him to the creations. I might say to him, there's no other reason then. There's no other reason to insist on taking these statements by their literal meanings. Why else would you take those statements by their literal meanings if you don't want to liken Allah to his creations? So he might say, because we don't want to deny his attributes. That's why. So the answer is what? The answer is, you can not deny the attribute and not take it literally. There's no contradiction between those. So what made you think that if you don't take it literally, you'll be denying it? So right there, that shows you that you want to liken Allah to his creations. Because you think if you don't take it literally, you'll be denying it altogether. So he might say, well, I don't understand. What are you going to do then? How are you going to not deny it and not take it literally? The answer is to say, this istiwa, this yad, this ayn, this wajah, these are attributes of Allah. Allah knows what they mean. They are confirmed for him. There's no denying them. They are not denied, but Allah knows what they mean. Right there means, I'm not taking it literally. I'm not even saying what it means. And whatever it means something befitting. That's not taking it literally. But that's not denying it either. So see how the Wahhabi missed right there? He slipped. So then what is this non-literal interpretation called? What's the name of that? The name of that is ta'wil. Ta'wil. Ta'wil means something similar to tafsir. And they are practically interchangeable. The ta'wil is the tafsir. There is slight difference between those two words in the Arabic language. But here, that's what it means. Tafsir. But not just tafsir, but very specifically a tafsir by other than what appears. Yani, it's possible to give a tafsir of a statement according to what it appears. A statement has an apparent meaning. A statement is there. It appears to mean something. And then you explain it. You elaborate on the meaning. So that's the tafsir. According to what appears from it, that's possible. And you can make a tafsir that's not what appears also. So when you do a tafsir that's not what appears from the words, that's called ta'wil here. Question 28. If the Qur'an so clearly validates ta'wil, what do they say about this verse to deny it? Yani, A person is saying, okay, you gave me the 7th ayah of the 3rd surah about the decisive verses and the ambiguous verses and the people who have perversion in their hearts. Your explanation is clear, but surely those people must have some way to explain this ayah. What do they say? So they say this ayah means هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب. He it is who revealed the book to you, O Muhammad. منه آيات محكمات. Some of it is explicit verses. هن أم الكتاب. They are the reference for everything else in the book. وأخر متشابهات. And other verses are ambiguous. فأما الذين في قلوبهم زيغ. And concerning those who have perversity in their hearts, فَيَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ مِنْهُ. They pursue what is ambiguous from the book. ابتغاء الفتنة. Seeking tribulation. وابتغاء تأويله. And wanting to make ta'wil for them. They say, وابتغاء تأويله. They want to make ta'wil for these verses, those misguided people. Who are the people who want to make ta'wil for these verses? The Ash'aris and the Maturidis. The ones who say that he doesn't have hands, and he doesn't have face, and he doesn't have eyes, and he's not over his throne. And they say he exists without a place. And they use their minds. They say these are the ones Allah warned us about here. وَابْتِغَاءَ تَأْوِيلِهِ. And they want to make ta'wil for the ayahs. وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. They say, but no one knows the ta'wil of these verses but Allah. Only Allah knows the ta'wil of these verses, so we can't make any ta'wil. We have to take these verses as they are. That's our business. Our business and our duty is just to take these ayat as they appear to us. Allah knows the ta'wil, and He dispraised those who make ta'wil. So that's what they say. So maybe someone might say, wow, that sounds pretty strong. I don't know. I mean, they got a point. Do they have a point? Do they don't have a point? The answer is no, they don't have a point here. How's that? You explained it better than they do. Because they don't have a point here because this ayah has another recitation. The way they recited the ayah makes them have a wrong meaning. Because they say, وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. And they stop there. No one knows its ta'wil but Allah. So when you stop there like that, this ayah means something altogether different than what they are. Yani, very different than what they are saying, what they think it means. When you stop the ayah here, then the ayah is talking about some other mutashabih verses. Not the ones we're talking about. Which mutashabih verses are we talking about? We're talking about the mutashabih verses that deal with the attributes of Allah. What other mutashabih verses are there? Like the verses that are disjointed letters. Like Alif Lam Mim. That's mutashabih ayah of the Qur'an. Allah knows what this means. Alif Lam Mim, those are 3 Arabic letters. And like Noon. Noon is an Arabic letter. Some scholars said this means the whale, the fish. Some scholars said this means the ink pot. So this is mutashabih. But that's a different type of mutashabih. It's a different subject. It is mutashabih ayah, but it's a different subject. This is not about the attributes of Allah here. So he's mixing something he doesn't know. So somebody might say, verse is what then? How it's not clear for me. How is he mixing something? Because there's another recitation of the ayah. Allah says, وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. No one knows its ta'wil except Allah and those who are deeply rooted in the knowledge. That's another way to recite the ayah. Don't stop after Allah. Keep going. وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. This is confirmed recitation from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. No one knows its ta'wil but Allah and those who are deeply rooted in the knowledge. So, what does the ayah mean then? If the Wahhabi is not slipping here, then how does he explain this recitation of the ayah? Tell us, Wahhabi. How do you explain this way of reciting the ayah? وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. No one knows its ta'wil but Allah and those who are firm in the knowledge. That's confirmed recitation. So if he says there's no recitation like that, tell him you fear Allah and shut your mouth. This is a confirmed recitation. You liar, or you fearless ignoramus. You are so heedless and you don't fear Allah and you don't really care for the truth that you would open your mouth to deny a recitation of the Qur'an without knowledge. Shut your mouth. You're not qualified for this conversation. So it is confirmed recitation. How do you explain it, Wahhabi? What's the mutashabih that those who are firm in the knowledge know, Wahhabi? Now you don't have anything to say. That's why you're wrong. That's the third surah, 7th ayah. Third surah, 7th ayah. So that answers the question there. Someone might say, how could the Wahhabi be misguided for merely believing something from the Qur'an? But now this question, after what we just said, shouldn't come. But let's say it's just a question, not necessarily after this one. Someone says to you, how could a Wahhabi be misguided for merely believing something in the Qur'an? Tell him because some people misinterpret the Qur'an. So they say, we took this from the Qur'an, but they misinterpret the Qur'an. Don't you know that there are people who misinterpret the Qur'an? I'd ask him, do you know that there's people who misinterpret the Qur'an? So he should say yes. Say, okay, so what do you think? Do you think that someone would misinterpret the Qur'an and then be guided? How is he be guided if he's going by a misinterpretation? And so Allah says in the Qur'an, يُضِلُّ بِهِ كَثِيرًا وَيَهْدِي بِهِ كَثِيرًا. Allah misguides by the Qur'an many, and He guides by the Qur'an many. Look how honest the Qur'an is. The Qur'an is so truthful that it tells you that there will be people who read in the Qur'an and become misguided. Yani, question 30. Now this is about the issue of kalam, rational argumentation. What if he says that your arguments are actually Aristotelian philosophy and the notorious heretical kalam? So if Wahhabi said that to me, I'd say, no, it's not. That's what I'd say. No, it's not. He made a claim, and I will say, no, that's not true. Yani, you could approach that another way. You might say, what's your proof? But if you ask him what's your proof, that's going to make him talk. And that's going to be, you're prompting him to talk too. You might ask him his proof, but you don't have to. So if it were me, I'd say, that's untrue. So I'll just defy him. So then, if he wants to continue that conversation, then probably I'll have the upper hand from there. Because he's going to then try to prove to me that this is Aristotelian philosophies. He's going to make claims that I'm going to be able to deny them. It's not true. No, that's not true. Well, Aristotle said such and such. Well, whether he said it or he didn't say it, I'm not following Aristotle anyway. Maybe he says something true somewhere sometime. Maybe he says something false. Doesn't even matter to me. Aristotle is a non-issue. This is just vitriol on your part. That's all that is. That's just vitriol. So no, it's not true. So if he says, now that's especially for if he says it's Aristotelian philosophy. But if he says this is kalam, let's say he just calls it kalam. He says, what you are doing, this is kalam. Okay, that's true. If he just calls it kalam only without saying heretical. If he said this is a heretical kalam, I'd say that's not true. So then either he can be silent and then it's over. And yani, I got the last word. That's probably not going to happen though. Say, no, it's not true. Or then from there, he's going to try to prove to me that it is heretical kalam. And then I'll just, whatever he says, I'll pull it apart from there. But what if he just says, this is kalam? He doesn't say heretical. Okay, that's true. This is kalam. So then, yani. So then he'll probably follow up. He'd say, but kalam is bid'ah. And I'll say, that's not true. And then from there, he will pull some references. Like question 31. Did not Ash-Shafi'i say, for the slave to meet the judgment of Allah with every sin but shirk is better than to meet his judgment with the kalam? Answer, this was reported from Ash-Shafi'i, yes. But it doesn't mean what you think it means. This means the heretical kalam that people like you do. Nah. He won't accept that. Bah! Humbug! We don't do kalam. You do indeed do kalam. You are mutakallim, whether you know or you don't know. The fact of the matter is all the groups do kalam, because the kalam is they're arguing for their way. So you are mutakallim yourself. Or you're a parrot. Either you're a mutakallim or you're a parrot. The scholar said, what comes forth from the parrot is not even speech. Because he doesn't know what he's saying. The parrot is like a sleeping person. You're talking in your sleep. Otherwise, you're a mutakallim too. So he might say, no, stick to what Shafi'i said here. He said it's better for the slave to meet Allah's judgment with every sin, but shirk is better than to meet his judgment with kalam. You said you're on the kalam. So I will clarify for him. This is not the kalam you think it is. This statement deceives you. Because Imam Ash-Shafi'i, what he said in this issue has several renditions. When you put them together, you would know that he's talking about the heretics. He's not talking about Ahlus Sunnah. And Ash-Shafi'i himself was a master at kalam. And he said so. And many examples are recorded about him in that. Like what? Let's see. Here's another statement of Ash-Shafi'i. For the slave to be resurrected for the judgment of Allah, having every sin except shirk, is better than to meet his judgment with any hint of these deviant beliefs. هذه الأهواء, the deviant beliefs. So he wasn't talking about Ahlus Sunnah. And he wasn't saying everything that's called kalam is bad. That's just what you think he means. This is why Al-Bayhaqi said in Manaqib al-Shafi'i, by this talk, Ash-Shafi'i, may Allah have mercy upon him, only meant Hafs and his likes among the people of heresy. This is what he meant, what Ash-Shafi'i meant in all that was conveyed about him, about disparaging the kalam and its people. Except that some narrators generalized and some specified. Yani, there's more than one rendition of what Ash-Shafi'i said in this subject, and you, Wahhabi, you picked one that you could manipulate, and then you misinterpreted it. In the specification, the qualification of those who specified, of those who qualified Ash-Shafi'i's statement, those who reported Ash-Shafi'i's statement qualified in that there is evidence of his intent. And I could read these examples here, but yani, we read them before. I have them recorded also on several recordings. So let's continue. Do the Wahhabis use any sort of rational arguments? Yani, do they have some kalam? Here's any sort of rational argument. So the way this question is posed here, if you suppose that someone asked you this question from the outside and he wants to know, he might say, do the Wahhabis use any rational arguments? So they have some arguments that one might classify as rational arguments, but they're not really rational, they're fallacious. So that's why the word sort is here, because they don't really have rational arguments, they have fallacious arguments. That means it has fallacy in there. There's a trick in there. So yes, they do have some sort of rational arguments, which is the fallacious kind, which is irrational arguments that might be misconstrued as rational. And so yes, they are mutakallims, they do practice kalam, they are practitioners of the deviant kalam that Ash-Shafi'i dispraised. Like they say, denying that Allah is in a place is denying his existence, just as saying that a person is neither in the mosque somewhere nor outside the mosque somewhere is denying his existence. So if you're ignorant and you're naive, you don't have some knowledge of the aqeedah of Ahlus Sunnah firm enough to protect you from that, like you are completely inexperienced, and then he tells you that, then you might fall for it. Denying that Allah is in a place is denying his existence, they would say. Just as saying that a person is neither in the mosque somewhere nor outside the mosque somewhere is denying his existence. So those Wahhabis amongst themselves, they say, shh, man, wow, did you hear that argument right there? Oh my God, that's what I'm talking about. And really that's fallacious, because basically he's saying Allah is a body, just to be short here. Or they say Allah is either inside of the creation or outside of it, and he is not inside of it, so he must be outside of it. And if he is outside of it, then he's either connected to it or disconnected from it. And he's not connected to it, so he must be disconnected from it. And in fact, he told us where he is. Ar-Rahmanu ala al-Arsh istawa. He is high over the creations, over the seven skies, over the Arsh. That's a fallacy. That's not a rational argument. Because when they said, he's either inside the creation or outside of it, that's not true in the first place. So they built their argument on a fallacy. That's not true right there. That's their starting point. He's either inside the creation or outside of it. So if you are completely unexperienced here, then you might fall for that. But if you got some of the creed of Ahlus Sunnah, you say, wait, stop right there, hold on. What about neither inside nor outside? Who told you that it has to be inside or outside and there's no third option here? So what they're going to say? They're going to say, well, we never saw anything otherwise. Did you ever see something otherwise? Right there means he's comparing Allah to the creations. You tell him, okay, I never saw anything otherwise, but Allah is not like anything I ever saw. Allah is not like the creations. Didn't he exist before there was an inside or an outside? So that's why they want to debunk your kalam. They say, what you're doing, your talk is kalam. This is haram and bid'ah and philosophy. And like that. So we read these before also, and they exist on previous recordings. So you have the book there. You can review that, and the recordings are available. Let's stop there. Do you have any question I can answer for you? Question: what is the refutation for a Wahhabi who says innovation is for those only from the Salaf? I'd say to him, you're contradicting the hadith according to yourself. Does the hadith mean every bid'ah or not? So what do you say there? Is that a good answer for you? So Muhammad, that's good enough answer for you? If he said that, I'd say to him, so does kullu bid'ah mean every bid'ah or not? Can't take it both ways. What are you arguing with me for? Kullu bid'atin dalala, and then you tell me somebody else can make a bid'ah? That's not the Prophet? Yani, that somebody can do a bid'ah?
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
So, just to give you some context, so when a Wahhabi says, when Umar ibn Khattab, when he, for example, when he innovated and he said, truly is beneficial to pray in congregation, because these are permissible because they are from the Salaf. He was a caliph.
Yes.
Anyone after that?
Yes.
Yes, and they say this is specific to the Salaf because anyone after that was innovative.
Yeah, no, do you know what this is? What they call that? They call that moving the goalpost. You know that expression? Yani, in the first place, his argument is to say every bid'ah is bad. The only reason why he's saying that there, because he gave him proof that he couldn't refute. So he moved the goalpost. After saying every bid'ah is bad, and then you gave him proof, but he's too stubborn to stop, then he moves the goalpost and say, well, and also what Umar ibn al-Khattab can do too. Oh, hold on a second. Why you didn't start there? You understand? So is it kullu bid'ah or not kullu bid'ah?
Yeah, okay, and yeah, so when you actually, when you say kullu bid'atil dalala, what is the correct English meaning for that?
Means every innovation that doesn't comply with the rules of the religion, which is most of them.
Okay, I understand.
No.
I understand.
Yeah, it basically means most innovation. You can say it two ways in translation. You could, if you want to use the word every, it means every innovation that doesn't comply with the rules of the religion. Or
that's what they believe.
Or if you want to use a different word, it means most. Every means most. Most innovations are misguidance. Or every innovation that doesn't comply with the religion is misguidance. Those two mean the same thing. As for every innovation without exception, that's wrong. And then when you give him proof, you're going to say, yeah, well, he was Umar ibn al-Khattab. Okay. So thanks for proving my point for me. They might say, no, I'm not proving your point. Where did Umar ibn al-Khattab did Mawlid? Tell him, he didn't do Mawlid, but he did something, didn't he? That's what I'm saying to you. It's not every innovation. It's most of them.
But when they say that he is what they're trying to say is, look, we're not qualified to innovate in a way.
Well, he was. That's fine. That's fine. He was, and that's what he did. He innovated. So it's not every bid'ah. It's not what you think it is. This proves that there are good innovations. You're agreeing with me.
Okay. I get it now. Okay.
Yeah, you tell him you're agreeing with me, but you don't want to accept that you're agreeing with me. You want to halfway agree with me. You want to try and sort of agree with me and then still defy me at the same time. If you were really sticking to your guns, Wahhabi, you'd have said, It wasn't permissible for Umar to innovate because nobody can innovate anything. But you couldn't stick to your guns because you're wrong. So you move the goalpost. And you say, well, Umar, he can, though. He's qualified.
Thank you, Sheikh.
You're welcome.
Jazakallah.
I mean, what